Hey there, soccer freaks. This is ATL on Fire, the podcast where we talk all things Atlanta United Football Club. So sit back, buckle up, enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of ATL on Fire. And I know it's been a little while, but we are making it happen. We've got Dave Katz all the way over on the West Coast in Seattle joining us and making this happen. So, Dave, how are you doing? Thanks for making time.
Feeling it just like the MLS players, cross-country travel. And now I know why nobody wins on the road in Seattle.
Yeah, for sure. But you're taking a little time out there with family and enjoying the West Coast?
Yeah, visiting with family, visiting the city. Yeah,
and it sounds like we might have a guest perhaps for a Monday show post-Sunday game to give us a little bit of perspective from the Seattle fans' point of view. And can you tell us a little bit about
that? I'm only halfway proud to admit that I have a cousin who's a Seattle Sounders season ticket holder and part of the supporters group. So that's great from a standpoint of, we get a little bit of new perspective on MLS, but,
Nice. Well, I've gotten to see a football game in the stadium there. It's definitely awesome. And hopefully we can get him for a Monday recap of,
I hope so,
of our game against Chicago Fire and have a little bit of third-party perspective. Mm-hmm. So we've got about 40 minutes. I know you got places to be with family out there, so we're going to do a quick podcast.
I've always got time for a podcast, Mikey Dobbs.
Yeah, man. And so I tried to fill the last month with a little bit of content. Hopefully everybody saw the ATL on Fire cooking Philly cheesesteak segment. If you haven't and have never made a Philly cheesesteak, the most popular YouTube video I put on the ATL on Fire channel, so definitely check that out if you have not made a Philly cheesesteak.
Turns out the Philly cheesesteak is more popular than the ATL on Fire content.
Have you ever had Cheese Whiz? Oh my God. Yeah. Right to your heart. So there is no lack of things to talk about in soccer in general.
Right, let's go.
Let's go. So we went into the international break, and so, of course, we have had nothing but soccer on TV with the Euros, Copa America, all happening simultaneously. I happened to be watching the Denmark game that had a tragic moment that turned out very good in the end for Christian Eriksen.
Yeah, our hearts and prayers go out to Eriksen and his family.
Yeah, but what a story that Denmark's still in this thing too.
Still in it, yeah. I mean, for those of you who remember the 96 European Championships, that Denmark, actually, here's a trivia question, Mikey Dobbs.
Hit me.
Of course, they gave it away, but what's the only team to win the European Championships without qualifying for the European Championships?
Ooh. That's a great one. I'm going to go with Holland since, they just, they won it in 88, right?
They did win it in 88, but that was not it.
Okay.
It's Denmark.
Okay. Well, I should have led the whatever you say there.
Yeah. So Denmark actually failed to qualify. And then because war broke out in, I believe, Yugoslavia, it's either, Yugoslavia who had qualified was not allowed to participate, so they called in Denmark at the last minute. They were all on the beach, and Peter Schmeichel did the rest, and Denmark won the whole thing.
Wow! There you go, fans. Dave knows his stuff when it comes to soccer, and definitely dramatic watching that Denmark Finland game with Eriksen getting defib back, and thank goodness he's back. But let's get to the soccer and be quick about the Euros. What's been your favorite moment thus far in the Euros?
Favorite moment in the Euros? I mean, I just have enjoyed, some of the underdog, a little bit. I typically root for England because as I follow the Premier League pretty well, and England's still in it, so that's good. Their side of the draw is really open, but this tournament, because I think there's no sense of destiny or whatever, I've just been, rooting for a wide open tournament, and we've got that, in the round of 16, a bunch of results you wouldn't expect.
Well, I have to say that I give it to the Danish game when they had that comeback and the third goal, and then they put in a fourth to seal it. How about that? That was pretty emotional to
Phenomenal.
watch.
Yeah, phenomenal.
But I mean, really, this is England's tournament to lose, as far as I'm concerned. And I would say, Belgium and Italy are the two others that are
Yeah,
the
but De
big
Bruyne
dogs.
is down, right? De
Yeah,
Bruyne
he's
is
down, but
injured, so that's a big loss for them. Italy, I'm not sold. I'm not convinced that defense is really good, but I'm not sure you can win that way. And Spain, who everybody thought couldn't score, suddenly scored 5 goals in 2 consecutive games. So
yeah,
I would
Morata
say
broke
I
the
almost
curse.
think that Spain's got to be the favorite on that side right now.
Yeah, Spain is definitely looking, solid, but it's the question of whether they can put the front foot forward when they need to, and Italy for the same, they can defend, but yeah.
And I don't
Anyway,
think that we've talked about it. Speaking of international break, but we kicked off the international break with the U.S. win over
that's in
Mexico.
my notes here. Yeah, Nations League. Uh,
What?
what a crazy game, and I mean, literally, that has to be one of the best soccer games in the last 5 to 10 years. If you're just purely watching for entertainment value and even don't have a horse in the game, that game is had everything. Had everything. I don't know what
Yeah,
else
I
to
mean, it
say.
was
Go back and watch it.
the only thing that was a shame was the last few minutes with all the fan stuff and all the
Yeah.
the delays or whatever. Tata Martino sent off
Yeah.
for patting the referee on the
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Um,
Tata, that violent coach that he is,
yeah.
patting the referee on the back, sent off. You
Yeah.
can't touch the referee, even on the ATL on fire. We know that.
It seemed like it was probably similar to the Heinze yellow card that got him suspended. I don't know. Pretty innocent
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, of course, we've got the Copa America down south that's happening at the same time, which is one of the reasons Atlanta United is missing two players, including our star, Joseph Martinez, and our right back, right, Ronald Hernandez.
Ronald Hernandez, of
Yeah.
course.
And so I don't know if anybody watched the Venezuela game, and I'm trying to remember who they were playing. It was I think the same day Atlanta United ended up tying Philadelphia. If there's any sort of consolation there, Ronald Hernandez, an Atlanta United player, came back the last minute and scored a tying goal in the Copa America. So at least promising results from an Atlanta United player that hasn't seen a lot of playing time or none really in the first team. So excited to see him come back, hopefully on a positive note. But Venezuela, I think, is at the bottom of the table right now.
Yeah, I
And
think that was the Ecuador game, right?
okay.
2-2 against Ecuador.
So I don't want to wish Venezuela bad luck, but I'd like our two players back. So the fact that they're at the bottom of the table, we could definitely use those two players back sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Messi's looking good down there too. So all right.
Yeah, I mean, Messi against Bolivia, I mean, wasn't much in doubt, but I mean, he traps the ball at the top of the box, turns around, lifts it with his foot, and flings it over the defender right onto the foot of an attacker for a volley into the goal. You're like,
Yeah.
made that look easy.
Totally. And one last note on the Euros: that Holland looked good in the group stage, but they ended up losing 0-2 to Czech Republic. Right? Am I right on that?
Correct.
And yeah, shortly after Frank de Boer resigns from the international manager duty in Holland. So, yeah, you felt like that was the tournament. If he was going to redeem his reputation, it was going to happen, and it didn't turn out going that way. So
I guess in fairness to him, so De Ligt got a red card in that game, which is a difficult thing. But
I don't know what else De Boer would have done to change the outcome of that game once you go down. I mean, they were the better team. Had they not gotten the red card, if I was a betting man, they were going to finish the winners in that game. They had more quality, even with some of their stars not hitting on all cylinders. I felt like they would have figured it out, but it is what it is.
I felt like the Dutch had a little bit of what we had in Atlanta United, which is they couldn't get the balance right. So in order to try to get some attack, it became so wide open, right? There was, for whatever reason, De Boer does not seem to be capable of coaching the team to get attack without making it wide open and conceding, just really, really easy chances. So they actually, the Dutch fans were really disappointed going into the tournament that the team couldn't score. It was very typical of the run that we had, where there was a lot of 1-0 and 0-0 games. But they went into the tournament, stepped right on the front foot, analogous to, what happened at Leigh United. But as soon as they did that, they couldn't control the game, and it just became super wide open. It was 3-2, and it was, that's no way to win.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Let's get back to MLS soccer, Atlanta United.
Yeah.
We are what we are at this point. Unfortunately, my pessimism that you turned me around from having at the beginning, I feel like we are what I thought we were. And that is a very average team. I realized that with 3 points in the table, all of a sudden we can move up and be in the playoffs just with one win. But I just fear, with the gaps that I am seeing in the way that we're capable of playing, that we are going to be right about where we are right now at the end of the season. Our record right now is 2-6-2. 6 bloody ties. And I think I've got, hold on here, Dave. Let me check something here. Oh.
Open wide for some soccer! Little soccer is It's coming to Springfield.
It's coming to Atlanta.
Oh, here. Fast kicking, low scoring, and ties. You bet.
Had to do that.
I like it, Mikey Dobbs.
Yeah.
I don't like the ties, but
it's a lot of ties. 6 ties. Come on.
Yeah, the only thing, just from a standpoint, we can get into details, but just from a standpoint of a record, you would say, okay, well, they're a tough team to beat. They're not losing games, and you feel like to go from tie to win is possible. To go from, to loss to wins, not so much.
Yeah. So before we get into the recap of the last 3 games, which was a Philadelphia tie, 2-2. New England, we lost by 1 goal, 1-0. And we had a 0-0 draw just last, Wednesday against New York FC, correct?
So we had 2 consecutive, I'm not sure we talk about either of the games. We had 2 consecutive 2-2 ties against Nashville and Philadelphia. Then we lost 1-0 to New York.
I was just talking about our last 3 games.
Okay. It was New York and then and New York again, right? New York City FC and then New York Redbulls.
Yeah. So, you're talking about all the games that were ties. Yeah. Sorry about that. Mixing this up there. But
no
so you've got all the ties. Can you repeat that?
So there were 2 consecutive 2-2 ties against Nashville and Philadelphia. I think that's what I want to talk about the most. And then we lost 1-0 on the road at New York City FC and came back home and tied 0-0 against New York Red Bull.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to talk about what I think some of the high-level problems are right now with the team?
Go for it.
All right. I have some scribbles here. So
when Mikey Dobbs goes into the notes, podcast listener beware.
It's a rare occasion. I'm enjoying some Glenmorangie. I don't have work tomorrow, so I'm really able to lean in tonight. Okay. And that's why I'm standing. I feel like I've got some energy tonight. And so the problem is we have a lot of quality. I really do. I feel like there's a lot of great players in our team, and they're able to knock the ball around, but there's too much youth out in the 10 in front of Brad Guzan right now. And I do not see a leader on the field. I do not see a veteran player out there, a 1 or 2 veterans, particularly with Joseph Martinez not being out there as of late. And in the early games, he was not confident, so he really wasn't playing that typical role of barking and leading by example. It's very clear right now that there is a lack of seniority out on the pitch, and there's only so much Brad can do from barking at the guys in front of him when they make an egregious error. You really need that person to take control in the middle of the field, and I just don't see that at all. I don't know if you agree with that, but I
you don't see that from Sosa.
I see that from Sosa. Sosa is the one shiny light, but he's still a young player. He is still somebody that doesn't necessarily have the team listening to him. He leads by example, which I love, and he puts a little grit in. Even the game the other night, like the whistle blew, the ball was there, and he like slid tackle somebody and just popped somebody. You're like, yes, I love his attitude. I love everything that guy's doing. Even his last two games, which I would say maybe are his two worst ones, I still love some of the things I see from him. Okay. From a leadership standpoint, I will give you that, but I still don't feel like the team necessarily is turning and receiving and taking his messages, other than, like in the other game, like the commentator said it, like he went in and got the yellow card, which could have almost been a red by just taking that guy out. That's one way to lead. I think it's the other part of the leadership that we're missing. And then it's a little bit more calmness actually that I'm looking for in terms of keeping our head and preventing these ties from happening and having a sense of I've been there and I've done that. And we're totally missing that.
Well, I think that we were a little bit ahead of the curve in pointing out how young Atlanta United is. And, because of that, so you got to combine not only young, but a lot of players who haven't played together very much. Add cherry on top with a new coach, and that's a recipe for what you're talking about, a lack of leadership. In a perfect world where the franchise is going to, be dominant, sort of for many years in a row, you wouldn't want to go through a valley where you have so many new players and they're so young. You would want to continue to turn over, at the little bit older and have at least a veteran presence. But the Atlanta United, the way the club has been set up to be a selling club, if you will, this is something that the Atlanta United supporters are going to have to deal with, which is a lot of, continual rebuild, seeing the new young player. The question is, how quickly can you bed in those young players? Are they talented enough, to win over the couple years that they're going to be here, and before they move on to bigger and greener pastures?
Yeah, and I think that's part of where the plan is broken down in terms of some of the moves, like Lopez having to go back, having to leave Atlanta United due to family circumstances. Veteran player, I think, which gets to my next point, which is one of our big problems, which is our 9 right now. One of the most frustrating things, and actually one of my problems with Heinze right now is why the hell we keep trotting out Kubo Torres. I truly, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, like I think you could go get a Sunday pub player right now that is some stud. I mean, of course, Jackson,
Mikey Dobbs, if you will.
I know, please. There, what I mean? There are some great players that are out there that have a lot more to offer instead of just being dead space out there, which is really all Kubo Torres is at this point, because he's not making any sort of dynamic runs that put any pressure on his primary goal is to score goals, right? And even in the last game, sure, he got back and made some tackles. Great. I don't give a shit about that. I want some goals. He's had way too many opportunities to get on the end of some balls at this point. And he's washed up and done at this point. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be this miraculous Kubo Torres of 2013 or whenever he was supposedly a great goal scorer. I never saw it.
I happen to agree with you. I think that Kubo Torres, he's lost that half quickness step that, he might have had that is really necessary to score. And in that role, you don't have it, it ain't coming back. I guess in fairness to Atlanta United, you would say, look, the continuity that they were supposed to build on was bringing back Joseph Martinez and signing him to a long contract. So he was supposed to be that continuity, the veteran player and the goal scorer combined, So, that went up on the field in Nashville, the beginning of the pandemic last year. But
yeah, and so supposedly through this summer transfer window rumor, and I'm going a little off script, I'll get to my third point here in a second, but there is rumors that there's a young Argentinian player named Thiago Almada, I think is his name. And he plays for Velez or something like that down in Argentina. And he got some of his first opportunities when he was coached by Heinze. He's evidently a stud. It would be a bit of a snafu if we were able to sign him. But there's a little bit of a rumor he's on our target list as a striker. I think he's 20 years old. It would be a huge signing. We'd have to figure out how to create a DP spot, I assume, by buying down, I guess at this point, Alan Franco, whoever our designated players with all the movement to bring somebody in like that. But I don't know that they'll do that, even though I think it's a smart move with Joseph Martinez's knee being uncertain. But Joseph also scored a great goal down in the Copa America that got taken back. So fans, some upside there with Joseph, even though he got COVID-19 and wasn't able to play a couple games, long story. But
you talk about adding insult to injury, right?
Yeah.
Joseph Martinez coming back, goes to the South American Championships and gets COVID.
Yeah. And he was vaccinated too, right? So
I don't know. I mean, is that true?
Well, they claimed everybody in the Atlanta United team was 100% vaccinated. So I'm assuming, yeah.
I mean, he was asymptomatic.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, maybe that's consistent. Yeah.
So,
I mean, so, but what I would say is, okay, you talk about designated players, right? But what I would throw back to you is, you talked at the beginning, you set it up like, okay, we have a lot of talent and whatever, but the youth and the lack of leadership is really hurting us. But, the guy who is maybe the question mark in that kind of analysis would be Marcelino Moreno, who's a little bit older, supposed to be a designated player. Yeah, 25 or 26. So what do you think of his performances?
I certainly expect more from him, but just like Barco, I feel like there is something missing with our style of play that is not tapping into the potential. I mean, that both Moreno and Barco can bring to any squad. All these people on social media that are talking about getting rid of Barco, what do you want? I mean, in terms of talent to replace him, because you better take a step back and realize that this kid, if you're tuning into the Argentinian first side 3 years from now, there's a good chance. I'm not saying nothing's a given here, but there's a good chance Barco might be a starter on the Argentinian national team. And so if that's the case, if he's not good enough to frickin' start for Atlanta United, then you need to get your head out of your ass. And that's how I feel about it right now with all these social media people talking about we got to get rid of him. I don't know that I have the answer, but I'm frustrated with your question around Moreno, who, by the way, I like because he gives 100%. Even when he's not getting the calls, he just kind of puts his head down and goes back to work. I've said that a million times in the podcast. And he's also a guy that, in certain moments is one of our big creators in terms of trying to break down the defense or putting in a good cross. So much more potential, but yeah, definitely a little disappointed. But I think
I have felt in the last
problem.
Yeah, I have felt in the last couple of games that he's finally started to look a little bit more like on the front foot, a little more aggressive. I thought he was being a little overly cautious in the early going. Times content to pass the ball on when we really needed him to take on a player or to try to create something. That being said, and the same goes for Barco, both of those players are creating certain things, but without a thrust to be the fulcrum of that creation, then a lot of it goes for nothing, right? And one thing is the kind of player you expect Moreno or Barco to be. If you expect them to be the primary goal scorer, which is sort of what maybe you would have to be right now, then I think that we're in for a long haul.
Well, I think I would expect Barco to be more of a goal scorer on the sheet, primarily because of his free kicks. And I actually have liked Barco's free kicks yet again because he puts them on frame. And there's been a little bit of lack of power with some of that's probably prevented them from going in. And some of his shots have been against some really good goalkeepers in the MLS too. And so I feel like I like what I'm seeing from set pieces from Barco, both from crosses in and shots on frame. Marcelino Moreno, I agree. I think I don't think I'm expecting a lot of goals from him as being a primary goal scorer. He was not a big goal scorer in his last club in Argentina either. So I don't think that's what we were expecting. We were expecting him to be able to break players down and get past people. And so I definitely want to see more of that from him.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about Moreno, even Barco, right? Heinze has really liked the inverted wingers, and I have felt at times when they've been trying to be most creative, Moreno and Barco been coming inside and they've been running a little bit into traffic. Particularly without the little thrust run. If they're cutting inside, and you have a Joseph Martinez who's playing on the front foot and making the little dart run inside, then they have an option. But if it's Kubo Torres, who's much more stationary in that moment, then the defenders can just come right off of Kubo Torres, and they end up, even if Barco or Moreno beats their guy, the second guy is always there. So, I think that's difficult with the way they're playing cutting in. The one thing I will say is, the way we have been able to score is off free kicks. We've had a number of pretty good-looking corners and set pieces that we've scored, or even in the last game, the horrific 0-0 draw, right? We hit the post pretty late on what could have been an easy goal, right?
Yeah, I mean, give it up to Brooks Lennon. I think both the goals against Philadelphia, right, were crosses from him. One that was a clear own goal against Shevchenko, I think, or no, what's the guy's name from Philadelphia? Anyway, their striker ended up having to go off his head and went in the side netting, and then the next cross that was a corner kick, went up, headed it, went off the shoulder, a part of the defender's body, but it still was, Walk's effort to get in there and get up for it, and both great crosses. To your point.
I don't know how to ever pronounce his name. It's Brzbilko.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, the set pieces have looked pretty good. But, on the flip side of that, and what I want to come back to, I think the point I want to make is, stepping back from, the New York City and the Red Bull games, 2 times in a row, we have a 2-goal lead in the 80th minute, 75th, 80th minute, and twice we come out with a draw, right? So what do you think of that?
There's always bigger issues when you give up a lead like that, right? But the Philadelphia game, I went back and watched it because I was curious of how did we let this lead go in the last 15 minutes, and particularly that last goal. I'm just going to go in on that one because I watched it over and over again.
You mean the absolute screamer?
It literally the not a screamer. I mean, it will go down as one of the best goals in the MLS, not only this season, but maybe of all time.
Absolute cannon.
And I looked at it and I tried to assess could anyone have really realistically stepped on him faster to close it? And the answer is not. They shouldn't have. I mean, he was not in a dangerous place when he picked up the ball. He was way far away from the goal, and it was a 1 in a million chance that he was going to be able to shoot from where he did to make that goal, especially with Brad Guzan and goal. He's got big paws.
Yep.
And, by the time that he shot it, people were closing him, right? So had he made it another 5 yards, he was going to get closed down. Yep. And, sometimes you just got to tip your hat. I know that's shitty. I think you don't let that happen by winning the game earlier. But I honestly felt like the Philadelphia 2-2 result was very fair because early on in that Philadelphia game, they had plenty of chances they could have finished. Sure. And they didn't. And so for them to get lucky at the end like that, that's how it pans out for me. So I look at it on the front end and be like, damn, we got really lucky. The fact that they didn't score some sitters, frankly, in the first 20 minutes of that game, there was a couple that came right across the front of the box and they just missed them. And so the fact that this guy scores one of the best goals I think I've seen, not only in the MLS, but in soccer in the last 5 years. The thing hit the upper 90, bounced in. It went in on the first bounce down, came up, hit the crossbar again, bounced in again, up, hit the crossbar again, and then down. I mean, what was that? I mean, I've never seen that before ever in my life. He hit the crossbar twice on a double bounce that hit the upper 90. I mean,
from like 30 yards too.
That guy, whoever he is, he should have just literally, he should do a walk-off and never come back and play soccer again.
Yeah, he's a center back too, right? Never shoots. No, but here's the thing, right? Both games, right? Nashville, Philadelphia, 2-goal lead, 75th minute, right? And in both games, Heinz chooses to bring on an extra defender, which I'm not necessarily going to critique, but in both cases, he brings on a defender for a forward. We lose the attacking momentum. We give up 2 goals, right? If you contrast that, for example, with Tata, one of the things that happened a lot, people think that we were scoring 3 goals, for fun. But even when we scored 3 goals under Tata, a lot of times the third goal came in the 90th minute, right? And he was famous for bringing on an attacker, at the 85th or 90th minute, when we were up 2-1 or 2-0.
We don't have one.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. So there's the question mark is that Heinz as a defensive coach, and he stepped on the brake too early and cost us the game, or does he not even have a choice? And so you have as a coach 2 options there: go for blood and try to score the third goal, or shut it down. And obviously he chose to shut it down, but does he have a choice? In the future, when let's say Martinez is 100% in full goal scoring, glory, would he choose to do that or not?
Yeah, and I mean, again, to me, it goes to the larger equation, which is we should have been down 2-0 in the first half against Philadelphia.
Yeah, so, fair.
I'm just looking at it like, we need to be scoring more goals if we're going to overcome that. That's a problem. Like, our biggest problem is goal scoring right now. I don't feel like when I look at these sheets, like, we're not giving up a whole lot of goals, and that's why we have probably so many ties as well. We're probably pretty decent on the defensive side of the ball right now, and I think we'll only get stronger. We have less injuries on that side of the ball right now. We are definitely struggling with offensive midfielders. With the recent injury of Ibarra, I'm definitely concerned. He seemed like he was finding his way and making a difference.
Yeah, he was playing better, yeah.
Eric Lopez, I still have, feel like there's some promise there. And, it was interesting to see Sosa shifted up in the last game. But do we want to dig in a little bit more on the Philly game? I mean, again, overall, I felt like a 2-2 was actually a fair result. I don't know if you agree with
I agree. No, I think 2-2 was a fair result in the end for the game, but you feel so disappointed up 2-0. Brad Guzan, gives up a bad rebound for the first goal where they score, and
I mean, it hit his hands and then hit his chest. I mean, he and it had a little bit of a funky thing coming in, but at the same time, you ask Brad after that, I mean, he should have held on to that. And, you got to credit that goal as a Brad Guzan mistake by not wrapping that thing up.
Yeah.
And he would say that much.
Yeah, I agree, but you could say, look, with their lack of a striker, you scored 2 goals in that game. With the defense the way we have it, it's supposed to be, dominant, should be enough. Now, I'm going to say 2 things about the defense. So one is that early on, I felt like we were dominant with our defense in terms of we were winning the battle up the field. We had a ton of possession. That hasn't been quite as true the last couple of games. The defense hasn't been able to get up the field. Now, part of that's being on the road in the MLS. It's a harder thing to do than you think. The other big question mark I have is, who is Alan Franco?
Yeah, it's a good question. He, in the last game, right, which was the New York FC game, he came on, correct, after an injury that happened to who? Somebody. Or he just got subbed on, right?
I felt like he just
was-
came on. I thought I thought that Robinson and Walks were both in the game.
I want to say somebody got hurt and Alan Franco came in kind of unexpectedly, and he had a really bad back pass where he turned around and didn't look.
Yes.
And so that was part of the who is Alan Franco. I think after that he found a little bit of composure and did some good things.
He also got beat off the dribble once pretty badly.
He sure did. He sure did. So there was a lot of uncertainty around Alan Franco. Is supposed to be one of our better imports.
I think if Alan Franco is the player that he is right now, Atlanta United doesn't get back over the top, and is basically a borderline playoff team. If Alan Franco turns out to be the player we thought he was going to be, which is, boss in the back, the leadership role, even for a young guy, then Atlanta United goes on to, zoom right up the table and finishes, as one of the contenders.
Yeah, I fear that Alan Franco is going through a lot of what, probably is happening to, somebody coming to the U.S. I'm assuming he's coming to the U.S. for the first time, getting grounded and comfortable. There's just so much stuff going on outside of the soccer field for him that if all of those things aren't lined up and you're comfortable in your regular life, then you're not going to be comfortable in the soccer field. That happens in every sport. And you can ask any athlete that. That's 100% true. So he's probably the guy, but I think he's going to need that timeline to get settled in. And you have to believe that that's, people are listening that don't believe what I'm saying there. It's a real thing. You have to be comfortable in what's happening off the field for you to be comfortable with what's going on the field.
I don't know. I might actually disagree with you a little bit on that one, right? So Alan Franco is supposed to be a borderline Argentinian international defender. He's supposed to be a guy who's, was considered to jump right to Europe even for the time being. If you're that player, even with getting used to Atlanta and whatever, in the MLS, you can't dominate. I think you should be able to still.
I didn't know that he had that much cachet that he was going to go to the European.
He's supposed to be.
Flip it up. But if that's the case, then I'm with you. But the fact he's in Atlanta United, I'm not sure I buy that that's actually the case. Yeah. And I'm just saying that, no matter what sport you're in, you have to be comfortable with your environment. So I know I'm giving him a hall pass right now, but yeah, I agree. As a designated player, he needs to step up and play better.
That's not like you, Mikey.
I know it's not.
Give him a hall pass. I expect him to be the subject of a rant. Like Alan Franco is supposed to be our guy, Argentinian. He's capped for the national team, for heaven's sake, right?
But I'm not seeing him get the start. There's something happening there where he's not getting even out of the gates, right? We were questioning, why isn't Alan Franco in? Until I see 3 games where he's played 90 minutes and he's screwing it up, then that's a different story.
Well, he had the injury earlier, and that I think has also contributed to him not maybe necessarily being able to settle. But
so I'm going to keep true to you trying to get out of here and on time to do what you got to do. But the second game against New England, right, which is a Bruce Arena coached side.
No, not New England. The New York City FC. New England was much earlier.
No, he was Philadelphia and then New England and then NYFC. Am I wrong on that?
No, Philadelphia, then New York City FC, and then Redbulls.
You're correct.
Because we played New York City FC. It was probably confusing you because we played them in Red Bull Arena.
That's right.
Which is weird. But, yeah, so you're talking about the New York City FC game in Red Bull Arena, yes?
Yeah. What'd you think of that game?
That
was the last game, right?
No, the 0-0 tie against Red Bulls was the last game.
Okay.
At home.
But that one
at home.
At home. And then NYFC. Which one was the one that was just frantic the whole time? That was the last game against the Red Bulls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the pace of that game. So let's touch on that game since my notes are wrong here, which is throwing me off. The
Well, I
Red
was just going to say the New York City FC game, you know, we looked like they were going to run us right off the pitch for the first 20 minutes, and then we settled. After that, I thought we looked like the better team on the road against a pretty good team. I thought, you know, we were a little unlucky to lose 1-0 in that game.
Yeah.
Again, we lacked the bite. We did pretty well in terms of possession or whatever, but we really lacked on the front foot. We couldn't get great goal scoring chances. So,
Yeah.
And then part of that just seems to me like, you know, who's going to be the guy to finish a good chance? And
Not Kubo
Torres.
Torres.
Not Kubo Torres, right?
So why isn't Heinze giving one of these younger guys like, you know, Jackson Conway more of a chance? Because he did come in that game or one of the games, and Torres came out, and his only opportunity, there's a nice head ball that came in, at least put it on frame and nearly scored. I mean, Kubo wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, and then we haven't seen anything basically of Josetu, right? Who's, you know, he supposedly went back to Brazil, got his green card, and is supposed to be fine now, whatever. And you would think, okay, if he's the real deal, we would see a lot of him. He's supposed to be a pretty explosive player, but it doesn't speak that well when you're behind Kubo Torres.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that.
Well, it's part of my concern about Heinze not seeing it and trotting him out there. I mean, he maybe the guy's great at practice and all, but you know, it's so clear and obvious to me that you get somebody in there that wants to score. There's just a desire to score a goal. We don't have anybody in the game right now that just wants to throw themselves at the ball and make runs, and just, it's not happening.
I actually feel like in the box, maybe he is capable of throwing himself the ball. But the thing of it is that he's so not dynamic that he allows the defenders to just be so comfortable. Like the defenders are so nonplussed, right? They're like, we know Kubo's not running by us, so we can just cheat off of him. We can do this or that. Like, you got to keep the defenders at least honest, right?
Yeah, but I mean, even the balls I've seen come right to his head, he's not doing anything with them. That is putting him in the corner. I mean, that he is frustrating more than Adam Jean. Like, killing me.
Well, he reminds me a bit of Adam Jean, right? Like, you know, I felt like maybe this is giving too much credit, but Adam Jean just looked like he wasn't going to move, didn't understand how to do any movement. Kubo Torres looks like he understands it. He just doesn't have that gear anymore.
Yeah.
And so but the effect is the same, right? Which is to not have a dynamic up top.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I agree. I think there's a couple of moments that he was making a run in the last game and somebody tried to slot him and he was, 3 yards behind where the pass was going to be. So,
all right. Well, now tell us about the frantic. What did you see about the frantic in the Red Bull, the 0-0 draw? You were not at the stadium. Neither of us were at the stadium.
No, I felt like I watched it through the VPN here to get around the blackout, and I just felt like the pace of the game was just out of control from both sides. I mean, Red Bulls, like that, I think Jeff Lorenowitz was doing the commentary and was just talking about, how Red Bulls are like, the bug that won't die, and they really were. They just put that constant pressure on, and we kind of played in the same fashion and got sucked into it. And I think got taken out of our game. And if you looked at it, I mean, the whole game was just this gigantic slinky. And by a slinky, I mean mainly just stretch from 18 to 18 the entire game. There was literally somebody's player and evenly spread across the field from the 6 to 6 box throughout that game, because it was just, the ball was just going back and forth, and it was, I don't know, it was crazy.
And how does that game end up 0-0? I agree with you. It's wide open. I feel like, Heinz trying to get some offense, was like push, get it open, and they did. They opened it right up, but nobody scored. I mean, of course, the pass off of Alan Franco, the Red Bulls have to score that one. How do they not score? And then obviously when we hit the post.
I felt like, I mean, honestly, I felt like we had the edge in that game a little bit. I felt like we actually had a little more quality. So I wasn't as disappointed, even though I again, I feel like we got sucked into their game a little bit, and I didn't like that part of it. But I think we did settle after the first 20 minutes, and we found a way to knock the ball around. So that was promising. But then at some points in the game, we just went right back to getting sucked into just that back and forth that I'm sure Heinze really doesn't want, in terms of a little bit more control in the way we're getting up and attacking.
Well, speaking of Heinze, he seemed pissed, right?
Yeah.
The final whistle blew. He turned and marched right out of there.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate to be Atlanta United on the training ground this week.
Yeah. And that's,
the question is, can we weather that storm or whatever? I am not, I think in the last minute or two we'll wrap up here, but I am not yet off the Heinze bandwagon. I think there's too little time, too many young players, too many missing players to really quite judge yet. I still feel like we're gambling enough and have enough of a dynamic that we're not the De Boer side and that it could come. But, again, is it going to? I think as we talked about in the podcast the last week or two, I don't know.
Yeah. And supposedly just from some articles I've read, not just the front office, but within the organization from different positions that are, I'm assuming, just reading between the lines, from like, the training staff to the medical to whatever, there's been a lot of turnover from what I've heard in the last 6 months or even the last year. And there's a lot of gaps that have yet to be really filled. And that is creating, some instability within the club that might also be kind of rubbing off. Again, I know it's, the roster and the guys that you march out in the field at the end of the day, but there's a lot of other things that, aren't in order within Atlanta United that I've read that I don't have all the details like these guys who have press passes, but sounds like there's some rumors that there's some missing pieces. I don't know if you've read anything on that yourself. You froze up on me.
Okay, so
yeah.
So we're gonna, on the podcast, we have a tremendous record of being Notre Dame and making predictions. So I'm gonna leave you with this: yes or no, Mikey Dobbs, Atlanta United gets there and becomes a real playoff contender. One word.
No.
And I'm gonna go with yes. So I think that's a good way to leave it.
It is. So that leaves a little bit of drama on where this thing shifts as we are. How far in the season are we? Not quite halfway.
Still only a third. Yeah.
A third. Not
halfway.
So that is a good way to end this. You being positive, me being negative again. I just don't see it. I think we're lacking the depth. I think things aren't gelling. Worried.
And keep in mind, I was a big negative on De Boer. So, I'm not just positive sunshine all the time.
Yeah. We'll take your family out to eat. And everybody, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully we'll do another one after the Chicago game as a quick recap. And if you haven't subscribed, hit the button. It's over one of these things. Ring the bell. Tell a friend. And thanks for listening. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.